I will, maybe a few others kind of joining us, but I will call the Jamaica Select Board meeting to order for Monday, April 12th. It is 7 o'clock. And first item is to ask if there are any late additions for the agenda. Paul.
I have one. In the agenda part that said number 6 is update on Hamilton Falls.
Yeah.
Can we expand that to include Pikes Falls management plan? Because they're sort of integrated.
Yes, it is. And I had a note of that. That's a good point, because I had that written in my notes to kind of talk about that, because they are definitely related, and their managements of falls are similar. Yep, perfect.
Greg?
Yes.
I did have one concern, and I'm probably going to bring it up in detail at the select board meeting, but it concerns how our Windham County Sheriff's Department is responding to calls and referring them to the state police. I'm wondering what's going on with that. So we don't have to discuss that tonight, but I'd like to be able to bring that up at the town meeting.
Okay, you certainly, can bring that up under other public concerns, whether it's tonight or at the town meeting.
I'll bring it up to you guys at the end. I don't want to rush. I'll let everybody get through everything else first.
I'd like to address it.
Oh, good evening, Ms. Godney.
Good evening, Mr. Janik.
Okay, so we have those. Next item is to approve the minutes from the March 22nd Select Board meeting. I know we've had another meeting since then, a special meeting that just had the minutes go out. So we will put those on to next week's or our next meeting for approval. So this is just the March 22nd meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the March 22nd minutes.
Any discussion, any tweaks, agenda, anything there? Perfect.
Good.
Hearing none.
Nothing, Paul, this week? Wow.
No.
All in favor of approving the minutes from the March 22nd meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? They are approved. And I might take a little longer. It's got more people on the screen than I've seen before. So as I start darting around to see who's saying aye and talking, excuse me.
You can move the squares around to line up the select board if you wanted to do so, to make it easier to see them, Greg.
Perfect. Thank you, because they do keep moving.
They drag and drop. You can.
And they don't.
I see 4.
Okay, I'll get on that.
Okay.
Just
saying.
saying.
God, I hope you can't see me. I look like hell.
Oh, come on.
I see boxes. So the next one, Paul had brought this up, just over, we a lot of times have this as an agenda item, just kind of a quick update on COVID related items. The governor's made some new recommendations on guidelines for public gatherings, operations, how they relate to that, and any concerns or anything that we may want to address leading up to town meeting. Paul, you want to take the lead on that?
Well, we were talking about how best to manage it, and it seems like the consensus is that we'd like to wait to reopen the town office until all of our staff are completely vaccinated. And as I understand it correctly, and Sarah, you can nod or turn your head, whatever, if I'm wrong, Sarah's 2 weeks post shots ends the 14th of May. The next ordinary business day would be the 17th of a Monday. So our suggestion was that we go back to, if the select board is interested in doing that, that we not go back to full opening until the 17th of May.
Yeah, that makes reasonable sense to me. Any date in the future. It's been great. The office has made some great adjustments, and things seem to be working as they are now. I don't think there's any real reason to rush, but it's also kind of nice to look forward to that too.
I support that. I think that's great. Yeah. We're all taking it slow. We're all moving in the right direction, right?
Can I ask Sarah, we certainly have seen you guys running a pretty smooth ship. Can you anticipate any difficulties if we hang on until the 17th of May? Anybody complaints or anything? that
No,
come up?
everyone's pretty good. They either knock or ring the doorbell or call ahead or send stuff in. Everyone's been really good. So we haven't had anyone yelling about that.
Okay.
Good, good. Yeah, and I think the other thing Paul mentioned, and this is just, I mean, I don't think we need to make any revisions on this, but I think we had talked about in the next few weeks, kind of doing a dry run of the town meeting setup, being in the town, hall, just to make sure that we've got, you know, the layout kind of understood and where we might need speakers or microphone or that kind of stuff. I believe that we should, you know, it's a little bit horse out of the barn right now as far as making any adjustments to the location, but it will allow us to maybe take a little bit deeper breath and not worry so much about our numbers. We certainly don't want to turn somebody away. I don't know if we're gonna, I mean, I don't believe we'll get up to our capacity, and it's a much bigger space and much more ventilated than if we open up the doors. So hopefully we'll have a nice day and be able to do that.
Greg, are we streaming it? Can we stream it?
That's
Good
I
question.
mean, we
That's a
can ask,
question.
like, we can't stream it for voting purposes, but we can decide whether we want to Zoom or stream it. We never have in the past. I mean, obviously we never have in the past. I don't know that there's a need to, but is there a desire to? It's a good question.
I mean, I could set up a camera.
CCTV
I mean,
has
I could bring
AOT there.
this computer, and it's a 27-inch screen, and just put it in front of everything. And there's a camera that people could see they could at least see the people out in the crowd. And potentially, I mean, again, if it's just informational, then we could just mute everybody and not let them participate. They could be there and hear what's going on, but they wouldn't be able to interact. And
Yeah,
vote.
but they can't vote or anything. I know I've been talking with BCTV about what their requirements are. They're planning to film the meeting.
Okay.
So in an informational sense, that's, you know, it's after the fact, but if they can't participate, it's really no.
Other than informational,
take
I mean, if
suggestions.
someone wanted to get in and see what's going on, I think it's just another way. Include me in that tour so I can look at it and see what.
Sure.
I think we can do it. I think we could pull it off fairly easily. Just if we let people know, you're just gonna, or we turn the camera around and we take a picture of the front where we're all sitting and we say, you can see what we're talking about. You'll see what Greg is, you know, talking about as the moderator, but you're not going to be able to talk. You're not going to be able to interject. So, and you're not going to be able to vote.
Can I ask you a question? I'd like to ask a question of Rich Melanson. Sir, are you able, while you're videotaping it, to run a parallel line into perhaps a computer or perhaps other system? So somebody online could be following you as you videotape it. That way you at least have a camera action from speaker to speaker.
Good point.
Is that doable?
It's possible. I know Core has, I think, been in touch with Greg,
Mhm.
and she is making sure that I'm recording this, and writing down the time code when you're discussing this, because I think she would probably want to come to your dry run also. And she could probably answer a lot more of the questions at that point.
Because that is a great idea. Is if we could split their signal and then run it to a Zoom session or something and then send it out. I mean, that's pretty much what it's going to be.
Yeah.
Again,
Can
you're
I
right.
ask you, why are we doing this when we're gonna have it filmed anyway? Because people can't come to the meeting? Is that the idea?
People don't want to come to the meeting because they're afraid to come to the meeting because they haven't been vaccinated yet. You're just giving them more real time. You know, we're all sitting here remote.
Bear in mind that, for one thing, things are out of sorts. You know, there's a revelation. It's gonna be on a Saturday.
Mhm.
And, you know, I don't know, not to complicate things, but if some meetings are recorded live like Brattleboro, but we never have been.
Right.
And
Well,
I don't think you guys can do what you want, but I think it's throwing some extra, excitement to say the least, or extra challenges into the meeting.
Well, by no means am I saying, yeah, let's do it. I'm saying, let's explore it when we
This
do
is
the
the first
tour
I've heard of
and
this.
see the feasibility of it. And if it's feasible, then we look, we figure out how to do it technically. And if it's not feasible, or if it's going to be a really, really challenging thing to do, then we decide not to do it. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about the more of the logistical side. I'm kind of with Andy on some of the thinking there is just that whether somebody sees it live or sees it a day later, they're still getting the information from the meeting, and it may save us a little bit of some headache, so to speak, if all of a sudden it's not working out right, or the signal's not being picked up, or they can't hear it quite well enough. But anyways, I mean, those are probably more technical questions, when we kind of get there and where the connections are and things like that. So we didn't really have any, this was more discussion. We didn't really have this as a decision.
I think it would be nice to have if we could pull it off, but I agree with you that it is not worth a major hassle. If it turns out to be a major hassle, the difference between watching it on TV or watching it on the computer and watching it real time is minimal, since they can't participate anyway.
I've just thrown out that we explore it when we're doing the tour. That's all.
I agree. I absolutely agree. The exploration makes sense.
I'm agnostic towards it either way, but I believe in getting more access to the public.
Sure.
Is better.
I agree. I agree with that.
Okay.
Greg, this is
Other
Rich.
comments?
Have you guys decided on a date for the run through?
We have not.
Not yet.
Okay. I didn't know if I missed it or not.
No. But fairly soon, just to kind of allow us some time to tweak anything that we need to.
Greg, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays work for me. Tuesdays and Thursdays do not. So,
Yep.
just for your info.
Okay. Any other discussion on that? Anything we missed? But I think that sounds good. We'll plan on opening the office a little bit later in May. Town meeting coming up May 1st. So next item on the agenda, update from Chris regarding the Communication Union District. Yeah, some good action happening there.
Yeah. In the year or so since Jamaica joined the Deer Valley CUD, we've been mostly getting our act together and working on internal matters. But with the receipt of proposals in response to the RFP we've issued, it's become clear to us that we need to go back to our select boards and ask for some guidance, because we've gotten very different types of responses. And they sort of fall into three categories, like I mentioned in that message I sent out. There's some that propose to go much faster than we anticipated by virtue of the company putting up money, and or work in kind. But the consequence is that we'd lose ownership of a substantial portion of the network, and thereby the control of by the CUD would be diminished, and then by extension, the control of the various town select boards would be diminished. And it would put our ability to fulfill our mission to bring affordable service to all somewhat into question, and probably also affect our service policies. The second group proposed to do exactly what we asked them to do in our RFP, which is completely consistent with the business plan that was published maybe half a year ago now. But that would involve going a lot slower and building it basically at the rate we could earn money by issuing revenue bonds based on the revenue that we're earning as we went along. And this would take much longer, but we would retain control, and it would be a municipality under control of the residents of the municipality, and and we'd be able to fulfill our mission completely. And then, because of the American Recovery Act, there's a third possibility, and that is the House passed Bill H 360 just recently, which gives $150 million to the state's CUDs to design, build, and manage fiber to the premises networks. And this would provide us with way more than the startup capital we need, and also would give us the ability to leverage that money to borrow the rest at very favorable terms. And if we put up all the money, we can go much faster and still be in control and fulfill the mission. And this is I think this is a once in a decade, maybe once in a lifetime event that something is really adequately funded. Something that's important is adequately funded up front. So anyhow, I guess you can tell that I'm very much in favor of waiting to see what the Senate does with this bill, which I'm pretty sure they're going to pass it as is, and wait for the money. It's also the case that none of this information was known when the RFPs were released. So had it been, we would have changed our RFP for sure. And had the companies been aware of it, I'm sure they would have changed their proposals. And if we do wait, I'm sure they'll ask to change them substantially. But there's some uncertainty. There may be people that, have waited so long for broadband that they want it now, no matter how they get it. So we really do need to seek your guidance. So my question is, what do you want me to do?
Well, I'll speak first. I mean, I think I'm seeing things just as you are, in that, I mean, it's kind of funny, your title on it said patient, but I think that's the most reactive also, to just go for it. That version, item 3 or whatever, option 3 sounds, I mean, almost like a win-win. I mean, there's still a little uncertainty there, but to move that way. Paul.
I have one question, and I'm not sure how it's going to play out, or even if it's germane, but I'll throw it out for something to think about. One of the concerns, and Scott's mentioned this a couple times, about what happens with this one-time money we get from the feds on this one occasion to spend it on things that only take one-time insertion. So that my concern is, if we start something with money from the feds, will it then somehow obligate us to continue funding it later on down the road? So that my question is whatever we get from the feds going to be sufficient to get things started, and then will it be self-sustainable ongoing, or is this something that's just going to jumpstart us into a position where we are obligated to then continue to fund it ourselves? Just a thought.
Well, two things, Bob. I want to remind you that the taxpayers, the town taxpayers aren't on the hook for anything tax-wise. But if there's 150 million bucks, there's 9 CUDs. If that's divided evenly, it's 16 million and change. So that's about half, maybe a little less than half the money we need to complete the job. However, our financial committee, who's in charge of fundraising, has lined up loans that can be had based on us putting up collateral. And this money can also be used as collateral to raise almost the rest of the money. We may have to issue some revenue bonds, but we'll have substantially more revenue to issue the bonds against. So if we get this money, we feel quite certain we can raise it's going to take 40 million, we think, and we feel certain we can raise that amount of money in a very straightforward way. So it's, I mean, I suppose there's a chance something could go wrong. I mean, you know, it's a fat lady sings sort of situation as far as the legislature goes, but it looks pretty good now.
Can I interject a little bit more uncertainty from the legislative perspective, which actually might be good?
Yeah, sure.
News? Sure. If you've heard the governor's proposal on how he would like to spend the ARPA money, he actually is suggesting that more money go to broadband than what was in that House bill. And so whether the Senate will change the dollar amount in the bill that the House passed is unclear. That it may not, the additional money could be worked into the overall budget, or down the road, because we have more time to spend the ARPA funds than we did the CARES Act money. More funds could be allocated to the expansion of broadband in the budget adjustment next year or the budget next year. So there's just as much uncertainty in all of that as everything else. But the governor is putting the expansion of broadband at the top of his list of priorities, and he is asking for more money to be spent on broadband than what the legislature has proposed. And some of the number shifting is just because we're getting information after we've made decisions and after we voted on bills. So the end result of that, I think, is still very much in question. We don't have all the guidance from the feds on how ARPA can be spent, and that may have some impact on where money ends up as well. So, I think that what we passed out of the House is sort of hopefully a lowball number as to where we end up with what money's being invested. But, the fear of this startup money not being enough, because it can be leveraged, as Christopher mentioned, I think is, I guess there's always uncertainty, but I do think that because this is such a high priority, that everyone's focus is on getting this, the CUD initiatives up and running. And this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. So anyway.
Yeah, if I could speak too, I mean, this is something that I've done in my work. We get stimulus money and we say, okay, we can roll something out that's related to COVID that has a high startup cost, and we use the money for that, and then we just have to maintain it after that. So yeah, there's still costs involved, but I think this is a fairly common practice for a lot of organizations and a lot of businesses and a lot of governments to get the money in, start something up with this influx of money and cash, and then there's going to be maintenance costs, there's going to be those types of things, but you hope you can absorb those at a later time.
Well, and because the CUDs are supposed to be a self-funded entity in the long run, that hasn't changed.
Right.
So uncertainty, but hopefully in the good direction, not in the bad.
Quick question for Chris. Chris, do you need a formal resolution, or you're looking more for kind of a consistent indication, kind of along the lines of how Greg expressed, his preference for option 3? Is that?
No, I don't need a formal resolution. I just want to make sure I'm not, off base. I'm a representative, so I want to make sure.
So, Greg, should we just sort of I'm aligned with your response. I feel very strongly about that. Anybody else want to offer their?
We lost Greg.
We lost Greg.
Oh, we did.
You're in charge, Andy.
Oh.
Okay.
I don't know what happened to Greg. Yeah, he's not here.
He found a better audience.
Maybe.
Well, we still have a quorum. So Tom and Andy, And
Andy-
Paul,
Andy's the vice, so he would take over.
No, I was just, Jessica asked the question, you know, if Chris is looking for a little direction. We'll just give it to him. I don't think we have to do anything other than that.
right,
And I'm all for the third option or third suggestion.
Yeah, I'd support Chris.
I do too.
great.
Thank
No,
you
I
very
would, I have some faith in Chris also, you know, aside from that he would, you know, do the right thing.
Greg's coming back in.
Oh, there he is.
See him, there he comes.
I don't see him. Oh, there he is. Yeah.
That was just me making a statement on the need for broadband. That's
Performance art.
my one half a G whatever fair point wasn't quite enough.
Consolidated communications. What can I say?
Greg, were you able to hear us or not at all?
No, I totally went out. I heard a good portion probably of what Kelly was saying, and that was where I left off.
All right, well, when Kelly finished her very helpful summary, we just took an informal straw poll to give, you know, Chris his guidance, and we all aligned behind your view around option 3. So I think Chris is, and there was some general praise for Chris, as well deserved.
Absolutely.
So just wanted to fill you in. That's sort of, I think we've given Chris consistent direction. Thank you to the representative also as well, who helped us kind of crystallize that.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you. That sounds good. So then, I guess on to item number 5, which is just an update and the next steps on our cannabis regulation. We, a few weeks ago, had, everybody probably knows, had a town vote, and I can't remember the numbers, maybe a
55 to 37, I believe.
55 to 37. So we approved I'm probably getting all my terms wrong, but we approved the vote passed, let's say that. And now I know, I mean, Fran had brought up a few points, and I guess we'll lead from there. I mean, I guess that's where the topic is going. So.
Well, if I may just interject and give you a Reader's Digest quick version of why I even bring this up. We're talking about the separation of 2 questions instead of 1. And the first question, of course, would be retail. And I am all for retail. So I want to make that clear. I don't seek to block anybody getting a retail license. But over the years, I began working with the medical program in about 2012. There were 3 not-for-profit companies that owned the then 4 licenses for medical in the state. And as it progressed, they became for-profit. And now they've basically been sold to out-of-state corporations. In all cases now, actually, originally the Champlain Valley and Southern Vermont Wellness in Brattleboro were still in state, but now my understanding is that they've been acquired.
Uh-oh.
Oh, consolidated.
Another argument in favor of broadband, right?
No, he's done.
Really?
He may not even know he's done.
Yeah.
I'm almost tempted to, go light a fire and start sending smoke
The
signals.
house. Oh, what happened?
There it is.
You blinked
Okay.
Lost you,
out.
Fran.
Yeah, for a bit.
That consolidated, like I said, that may happen again. I'm sorry. Basically, what we're talking about is vertically integrated companies, limited licensing. We're talking about they are actually having a representative on the advisory board, which the small growers do not at this time. So this whole program since about 2012 has been focused on these companies getting the retail licenses when they became available. The Ianthus Corporation, which owned the Grassroots and brand and even had the idea on their investors page oh God, no, I'm not going to get the term, but basically they were pushing the idea they would get the first license many years ago before that was even something that was happening. So what we're seeing is basically at this point, the state of Vermont has sponsored these companies and given them the market with a 6 months advantage over any other small businessman in Vermont. And then they have basically handicapped those small businesses by either forcing them to wait an additional amount of time beyond when these people get to actually start retail sale. I believe as much as 6 months. And then you can only purchase one license at a time. So you're going to have to get each license individually if you're going to try and do something. So there's a big disadvantage to the small businessmen right now. This could change with the Cannabis Commission coming in, but as the DPS has owned the program since 2012, all we've seen is them reinforce the position of the 3 companies that own 5 medical licenses. And it just seems that this is more of a state-sponsored monopoly in a way. And I didn't think that town of Jamaica and the people that I know here would be interested in really inviting that to town. I thought that perhaps we could get a chance to vote separately on the issue. And if we could come up with an idea that would just simply carve that off, that would be fine with me. If we just have a vote on the integrated issue at some time in the near future. I understand we have to do it by Australian ballot. I'll take questions.
Yeah, Paul.
So what I understand, if I can kind of boil this down, your
Yeah.
complaint isn't about the marijuana license itself, about the proliferation of marijuana related businesses. Your issue is
Absolutely not.
out of state corporate entities running the stuff instead of in-state Vermont local growers. Is that the crux of the argument?
Yes, Paul, we have, they've been given great advantage by the laws as they currently are written in 164, Act 164. And they're being, as we speak, they're be giving more of an advantage in a bill S25 in the House that perhaps our representative could speak to. But Senator White had just added on in a committee hearing that I watched, added on Virginia Renfrew, who's a lobbyist for the dispensaries. And she's added on as the representative of the Vermont Cannabis Trades Association. And the idea for an additional member evidently came from a grassroots organization, and they were not really allowed to speak at that meeting. Well, I didn't think. That was my opinion. And then so that was given to them in a way that I think is preferential over all the other businesses in the state that'll come forth, and gives them more of a seat at the table that the small grower doesn't even have. So I'm seeing this evolve. And what I feel is that even though there's a number of towns that have just voted it once and voted for everything, and I don't want to kill retail, but I'd like to just slice off and have another vote just to talk about integrated. Many of the people that voted for retail didn't know they were doing this. I've spoken with a number of them. I could get signatures for a petition if I needed to, but I'd rather just not have to go through killing this vote, but to get another vote on the integrated licensing, because if we allow an integrated license to go forward, then we cannot take that away. And I think that would have a negative impact on participation by the local community that's already in growing somewhere. I mean, I don't know them all. I'm not going to come out and say, hey, this guy's growing or that guy's growing, but there's been a parallel market for over 40 years. And we're trying to bring these people into the tax market, not force them out. So that's what I say.
So question for Kelly. Ms. Paella, does the marriage of the cannabis question impact plus or minus the discussion of out-of-state corporations running the program versus local people running the program?
No.
No, that's not, I mean, so it's two separate questions. You just happen to vote on them as one article, right? And so the whole article passed, and so you've allowed both kinds of licenses
Right,
to, operate in Jamaica. And by allowing integrated licenses to operate in Jamaica, those 5 integrated license holders are out of state corporations. So, in a roundabout way, you've voted yes to allow that. But if you vote to opt out, because you're at this point, you're not voting to reconsider the question that you've already voted on, or that's my understanding based on the timeline. I don't remember what the timeline was to ask for reconsideration, but I think it was coming to a close or had closed.
I think I have 12 days left.
Okay, so I guess you have a couple of options. You could vote to reconsider the question that you've already voted on, which is both types of licenses. But being that you have voted to opt in for both of those types of licenses, I believe, although you should check with your town attorney, that you could also hold another vote just voting to opt out of allowing integrated license holders. And if you opt out, then they're not allowed. So if someone was to acquire a license before you do that, that license would be allowed to continue to operate. If you opt out before that happens, then no one can apply. But being that you've already opted in, if you don't have another vote to opt out, then it'll just will move forward as is.
So in your opinion, we can divorce the cannabis issue and construct a vote specifically around the out-of-state licensure?
I wouldn't know. I would not do that. I think that the vote, I believe, again, talk to your town attorney.
Mhm.
I believe the vote would be simply to opt out of allowing integrated licenses to operate in Jamaica.
Yes.
I don't get anything more than that is would probably be questioned on legal grounds.
Mhm.
I think you are allowed to hold a vote to opt out of allowing integrated license holders. I don't know that you're allowed to block businesses based on their ownership from operating in your community.
No.
Can we do that without having to shoot the entire cannabis question in the foot? Can we do?
I believe so.
Okay, that's what I asked.
And again, right, and again, talk to your town attorney. But you voted as one article, but you really were voting on 2 different things. And if you choose to reconsider the article that you've already voted on, and it got voted down, then you would also be voting down regular license holders, which from the sounds of it is not what you want to do.
No, may I
Right.
jump in? I'm going to jump, Greg.
And hang on. Okay, go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Fran, and then
All
I'll
right,
do Mary Ann. I see your
it's
hand.
directly related. Let me just finish it and then you can add Mary Ann if you like. Thank you. We're not trying to block companies. If integrated licenses were allowed for every single business owner in Vermont, I wouldn't be sitting here tonight talking to you. I wouldn't be arguing the point at all. What we're saying is they've limited this, they've created this limited licensing for only these corporations. And for the time being, until they open it up, I think it's fair. Then we could open it back up again. And anybody wants an integrated license, I think it'd be great if once they're all allowed to. Thank you. I'll stop.
Okay, yeah, that's helpful. Yeah, Mary Ann, I see your hand there too. Thanks.
Thank you. I think that in order to facilitate this whole marketing scheme that's been come up with for Vermont, that's farm to table. And anytime we get a blockchain integrated corporate entity coming in here, they're not going to be able to compete. They've proven it. They've already proven it by the failed medical program. And I can honestly tell you, why? Every other facet of medicine is covered in this. I'm a retired nurse. Like, I really need to I'm sorry, but we don't need another corporate, big pharma here. We need to support our people to be able to sell directly. Everybody has to come up with the test for the purity of their product. And I'm not looking to sell anything, All I'm saying is please give our neighbors a chance before you hand it over to, the Walmarts of the world. And I'm not dissing Walmart. I'm just saying, I'd rather pay my neighbor for eggs than I would a big corporation. It's
Mhm.
that simple. And I can get what I need from it. I've already figured that out. I'm done. Thank you.
All right, great, thank you.
So Greg, what do we have to do to get this vote? I mean, we should talk to the lawyer, obviously. And you had sent an email out earlier today that discussed some things. Was
Yeah,
that
there's a couple of
regarding
things.
specifically this revote, or was this regarding something else?
There's a couple of things I believe could happen. One, just so full disclosure here, we didn't adequately warn the vote. We missed the print version of it. There is a way for us to cure that. I mean, some of these and ratify the vote. That also needs to go to an Australian ballot. There is, so there's that portion of it. There's what Fran has brought up as a potential to petition and go forward that way. I believe, again, and I didn't ask this question directly, but by reading some of the statute, that we as a board can move that forward as another vote and warn an Australian ballot. So there's a couple things that I think have to happen on tandem tracks.
So
We could do both at the same time.
Right.
We could ratify and opt out if that's what we decide to do, to put to the voters. We could ratify and opt out of the sorry, my
Integrated
brain is
licensing.
fried, but of the integrated licensing portion of the previous vote.
So if we don't ratify, if we say we screwed up, we didn't warn it correctly, they voted, the people voted, we're gonna just throw that election out because we did it wrong, then we could just do the vote and split. We could do a new Australian ballot and split the articles and just do another vote and just discard the first one. I don't see why we would want to vote to ratify the first one and then have to do another vote to undo the integrated license. Just say that the vote wasn't legal or it wasn't warned correctly, so therefore the vote is invalid, and then we're going to do it again. It's a little bit of egg on our face, but I think that's probably the simplest way to get it done.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And warn everything correctly the second time.
My hope and takeaway from the meeting tonight would be to get some of the will of the board of how we move forward, knowing these different things and knowing what the public concerns are, and then to work with the town attorney to draft up the correct procedure and the correct wording of the warning and things like that. Whether they're two simultaneous votes that happening at the same warned meeting, or if we vote to not ratify the previous vote, we just move forward on one new vote.
But the ratification, I'm sorry, Andy, go ahead.
I'm reading an email right now that is from our town attorney to Greg. And we need to talk to our town attorney about what to do. It looks, I'm not going to read this out loud, but it says what we need to do. Did you guys get that email, or am I
Yeah,
the
that's
only
what I
one
was
that pulled
talking
it?
about.
That's
Yeah.
like
The last part, which came down, looks like today, tells us how to remedy this.
Mhm.
And then if we want to split I keep forgetting how the terminology of it too. What Mr.
Retail and
Janet's talking
integrated.
about, that's something maybe we need to talk to our attorney about. I'm getting lost there, but I'm not an attorney.
I would suggest running that by your town attorney for sure, because ratifying a vote and then having a vote simultaneously to,
That's crazy.
do the opposite he might have some concerns with that.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I just think it's going to confuse people. They're gonna be like, oh, we're accepting it, but then we're voting to take what I think that's so confusing for people. It's
Right.
confusing for me. That's why I just look and say, if we just shelve the original vote and never ratify it, then, and we just do a new vote. That
Yes,
I would think would then supersede that. That's what I support doing.
and make the second one two separate votes.
That is
totally
correct.
Separate, not intertwined.
That's correct. Yeah,
That-
that's what I
think
support.
That makes the most amount of sense, Tom.
But
and I think
if
that's
we
what
have-
Fran's
if we
asking.
have to ratify it, I mean, that's fine. The risks, though, there are, if we do revote this, is that it could fail, or
Right.
one of the articles fail, or both of them could pass again.
A lot
So-
of people didn't know about the vote.
Right.
That's what I'm hearing. Well, some people.
Some
told me
didn't know.
that, but that always happens.
Yeah.
But I think if there's a second one, more people are going to show up. We had what, 70, 80 people show up, 70, 80 people. I think the second vote's going to be a lot better, a lot more participation. And again, which side gets their people out? So just throwing that out, that's a risk. That's just something that that needs to be taken into account.
And by separating it makes it more clear for everybody.
Right. Yeah, our initial goal there was to be as encompassing as possible for the business aspect of our community. And, probably in hindsight, they were being jumbled together was maybe not the right thing.
So do we need, I don't want to circumvent the board.
I don't think there's any action we
No
can or
action
should
we need
take
to take
tonight.
the first vote or anything.
I believe there's nothing we should do tonight until we have further detail. We'll leave Fran with enough time that, we believe that we're not going to need a petition to make changes to this. So
All right, thank you.
we're not under a timeline gun here. Kelly,
Yeah, I'm not going to go into great detail about the bill that's currently now in the House, because who knows where everything will stand. Just one detail that's a little bit relevant to this specific conversation. Right now, in S25, there is a provision that if a town hasn't held a vote to opt into retail by, I can't remember the exact date, but it's sometime in 2022, then you will just by default be opting in to allowing retail. So that's in the bill right now. Who knows where it will be in the end, or if it will even pass. But so if the vote that you've already taken ends up to be not a legal vote, and so you have not voted on this question, and time goes by and this bill passes and becomes law, eventually retail would be allowed in Jamaica, even if you do nothing. If you vote and it fails, or you vote to opt out, then you would still not be allowing it. But I'm just, there's this other sort of deadline looming on the horizon that eventually may mean that retail will be allowed in your town, even if you do nothing.
And integrated too, or no, that's not in that. Integrated and.
Right now, yes.
Okay.
Which kind of speaks to how the system is spring loaded in favor of one group versus the population of a particular town.
Right, but if you've held a vote,
Yes.
then, the
We
town.
clearly need to act before 22, for sure.
I don't
Yeah.
think that's an issue either. I think we could definitely get this done in
Right.
20.
I think so.
Yeah,
Fran,
it's only April.
Actually, I would say, if I can I think you have to act before the commission starts issuing licenses, because once the license is issued, we can't go back. But
Yes, sir.
my point that I was holding my hand up for was actually that I've spoken to a number of Jamaica voters, and some of the people that voted no because you did not separate the question and they didn't want integrated licensing. And then other people that voted yes were upset that they voted for integrated licensing. So it is my impression at this time from the individuals I've spoken to, and I do know a good number of the community, that we would pass the retail again.
That's my expectation as well.
Yeah.
That's left to the people.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yes, I understand that. I don't want to take any businessman's opportunity to have a retail license. That's not what I'm doing this for. Really, we've got these companies that haven't served the patients. They're selling their licenses. That's their product. And I'd like us to have jobs that are $25 to $50 an hour for people here rather than $15 an hour trimming corporate or, weed in a factory.
Okay.
Thank you.
This
Yeah,
is for
I think-
anyone who wants a license, not one man.
Pardon?
The select board opted into this. We didn't do this for one guy.
I know.
Anyone can apply for a license.
No, I didn't say that. All I'm saying
Right,
is I'm
right.
not trying to stop anybody from getting a retail license. I'm making that clear.
You said
This is
this guy.
not about any particular guy or anything else. Okay, the gentleman that gave the petition wants to have a retail store, obviously. So that's who I was speaking about. So I'm not against anybody having a retail store. All we're trying to do here is get a level playing field for everybody that wants to participate in this new economy and do so in a manner that if they're going to keep these licenses limited, would give the small guy around here a chance. I'd love to see a couple of retail stores in the town that could compete and provide good quality product rather than some factory level product. I've experienced from these. I'm a medical patient. I've experienced it from these dispensaries. I've had patients come to me with some
Garbage.
stuff that's
Okay.
not,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think our next step here is not to make a decision here. I think we've got a pretty good consensus of the will of moving where we want to move forward.
Thank you very much.
You'll contact the lawyer then, Greg, and
Yeah, I'll talk to Nick. Certainly take any other feedback that anybody comes up with, anybody on the meeting tonight. And we'll bring this up at our next meeting of where we move forward.
super.
Paul?
Yeah, I would just like to make one observation, and that is to some extent to thank Fran and Kelly and others who've been working on this for a very long period of time, that we are now over the question of whether cannabis ought to be allowed. We are now into the question about how to manage the allowable cannabis. It's a different question, but it's a valuable one now that we're on the slope where we've got part of it accomplished. So thank you, Jan. Thank you, Kelly. I think we're all on the right page.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Kelly.
Did I say
Kelly.
Jan or Fran?
You
Frank.
said Jan, and I get that all the time. Don't worry. But Kelly was a big part of this, guys. I have to give her a lot of credit for all the time she spent on us while she's been with us as our representative.
Thank
My
you, Kelly.
pleasure.
Thank you.
I'm gonna stick
Thank you,
around for the
Fran.
rest of the meeting too, if that's okay.
Okay.
Oh, you're a glutton for punishment.
I am.
I asked a question, so I'll stick around.
All right. So on to item number 6. I see a number of familiar faces there. Andy had brought up the fact that he had been asked to join, and several of the others on here were also the Wyndham town of Wyndham. Their meeting last week, I believe, was an update on Hamilton Falls, and Paul asked also to throw out there that we kind of integrate Pikes Falls in this whole discussion, but we'll start with Andy and just give an update on where it came out of that meeting at.
Okay. I'm just going to give you the high points of it. I have a lot of information. I have the whole discussion here, and there's some people on here who may have some comments, I would guess, but I took notes, and whoever sent me this is pretty much everything that was said in the meeting. So I received an email from the Wyndham Select Board Chair inviting me to a follow-up meeting. Technically called the Hamilton Falls Update with guests from the Forest Parks and Recreation. And if you need to know their names, there were 4 of them. I have their names. They were the same people, I believe, or at least some of the ones who were at the meeting that Tom and I attended representing the town of Jamaica. So just like an overview, Hannah Phillips made a point of telling us, and not to minimize what was going on in Pikes Falls, Hamilton Falls, but they're dealing with this statewide last year and expect to this year because of the shutdown. And so they talked about some short-term solutions or remedies, and then I'll talk about what may be some long-term things. But trust me, what Hamilton Falls wasn't the only place that kept coming up. But my take on it was they're giving Hamilton Falls some serious attention. That's what I thought. But okay, I'm going to address some of the short-term stuff because this sounded like it's going to happen. One of the men, Brian, addressed some short-term stopgap measures, they kept calling them, like dealing with parking. They've obtained, this is a big one, I thought, they've obtained funding for a ranger to work with people, directing them to 4 or 5 parking spots and redirecting them when the spots are full. Someone pressed them on how, is the guy going to be there every day, but sounded like more days than not, one of those answers, like 3 or 4 days a week, but on the weekends of ranger. The ranger's mission will be to educate people about ethics. And there was a website for the ethics that he's going to be talking about. So some of the things is going to be no parking on the roadside, no littering. And the ranger's not just for the falls exclusively, but they're hoping that the ranger's presence, the atmosphere will change and, things will start heading in the right direction. That being that someone, some kind of sort of law enforcement or Forest Service people will be there, so, there'll be some sort of order there. Also, they're working on some signage. I can't really remember what that was going to be about. And they hope that it'll inspire people to take care of the land around the trail. They'll designate an emergency parking area in case, rescue, or there was even some talk of where Dart would land. And they're hoping to revegetate some of the sensitive areas that will be roped off. They're also planning to put in a portable toilet, but there was some discussion about that. I don't know if they're going to do that, as human waste was one of the issues that came up last year. I asked the question, will the sheriff's department contract be in place again? It was my understanding that they got that from the CARES Act last year, and she said, sadly, no. I took it as the ranger will, that funding was not available. So not to get into the whole thing, but Wyndham has a sheriff's contract. We do. That came up later, but so that was one of the questions I asked. And boy, there was an awful lot more talked about, a lot of other suggestions, but I mentioned that we were having trouble in Pikes Falls too, and I know that's not state property, but someone asked me what the town of Jamaica was doing about the parking at Hamilton Falls, and I told the group that Charlie Peck was working on an ordinance for us, and I wasn't sure when that was coming out, but I was hoping that it would come out soon, and that he was doing a very thorough, and I'm sure was looking at all the legalities. He was trying to get together with the sheriff's department to ask for some advice from them. And I have an email that Greg and me got from Charlie concerning the ordinance, but there was an awful lot more talked about. But the thing I was impressed with was that they're really taking it serious, and they're going to have a presence there. Another thing was to get more people, or most people, to come in through the Jamaica State Park side to, have to walk up through and collect a fee. I mean, that the fees will help with everything else, but so, there were a lot of people from Wyndham there, and I just said that we would be willing to talk with the Wyndham Sheriff's liaison on their select board if we could help with maybe part of our contract. We could share with them up there or add some on. I didn't promise anything, but I said that we would work with Wyndham Select Board. We would help any way we could. That's it in a nutshell, but there's 3 pages of other things that were talked about. And I think I could answer any question if other people on here can't. But that's pretty much the gist of it. There was, if you want to talk later about the long term, my take on that was they were basically going to see how the short term things go and work off that. And when the long term ideas would be presented, they will ask for public comment, later in the summer, not right off. And there's one other thing I'm forgetting about. That's pretty much it. But not really. There was a lot of talk about a lot of things. So if anyone has any questions or would like to add on to, I'm just looking at this from the Jamaica side. There was a lot of other conversation from residents in the Wyndham Select Board and the Forest Parks and Recreation people.
Bob.
I have a question. Well, I shouldn't say a question. I understand that the state park is opening officially at the end of this month, April 30th. Will you have your parking regulations in place by then?
I'm not sure. It looks like maybe Greg could, do you have that email Charlie sent you? I have it.
Yeah, I
But
can
I'd have to
give you an
search
update.
out the timeline.
Yeah, so the timeline, Charlie's actually taken, we do have a traffic ordinance in place in the town of Jamaica.
Right.
It's kind of outdated a little bit in certain areas, and Charlie was kind of taking that as a whole to strengthen that, because parking is part of that. The thing is with the ordinances, there is a time frame that will kind of walk through this process to get them warned and updated. So we're still living within our current ordinance. I mean, there is an ordinance. I don't have it right in front of me right now to know how it addresses specifically parking in those spaces or those in specific locations, I
It
guess.
was
the best way
written
to
in
say
the
it.
early 80s. It doesn't address anything.
It
Really?
says
Right.
that
Well,
he says, I plan to add a new section creating a town-defined no parking zone in the road adjacent right-of-way of most or possibly all West Wyndham Road in Jamaica. He's using that for an example, but that will be a change in the ordinance
yeah.
in
So
other places in town, but it's called an ROW, probably right-of-way, I'm not sure.
So,
So Bob, the time frame is once we get that and we digest it and make a decision as a board that we pass that, then there is also then the 60-day waiting period that someone can come in and petition against it. If that's the case, then it goes to a special town meeting. We have to discuss it and then potentially put a vote to the town. So it's not going to be, anything's not going to be done in 2 weeks because we have a 60-day waiting period regardless after it's passed by the select board for the public to come in and challenge it. So you're talking the end of summer at earliest.
Another thing,
or midsummer, yeah, it's definitely not early
Midsummer,
summer.
yeah, August, I would say.
And Charlie's taken the initiative on this on his own time and gone probably a level deeper than we were all. I mean, we definitely want it, but then he's not just addressing one parking issue. He's looking at, and as Tom said, this ordinance goes back to the early 80s, as do several of our town ordinances that he's looking at and helping us with. So he's done quite a lot of research with local towns, taken good examples from them, best practices, and also seeing what can stand up as far as the legal side of things go. So at least the early part of the summer, maybe into midsummer, we're still working on the guidance of our existing ordinances and the limitations of what the state has set aside for parking spaces up there. But it's not going to limit somebody parking down the road a half a mile, that type of thing, or anything like that.
Charlie did say that as soon as the select board is able to resume regular in-person meetings, he'd be happy to attend and report on the first draft of the ordinance revisions.
Yeah.
So that's somewhat of a timeline. I don't know when that's.
And I'd
gonna
like to
be.
move quicker than that, but it's also, these things do take time.
Right.
We want to make sure that it's can be integrated across Pikes Falls, and that's where this kind of comes in, and where Paul brought that up too. You know, how do we look at that for this summer? Because I know parking up there is a huge issue. Our Pikes Falls management plan that the town has, it does say that advisory committee shall be formed for Pikes Falls and appointed every year, which hasn't happened in a while. Robin Gibson and I have had conversation, and she's would be interested and honored to kind of spearhead that a little bit. So we're working on this from different angles.
Sheriff's Department was very helpful last year with the parking problem up there.
Parking in the traveled lane is restricted already. So that's already something that we can hold people to. It's
All right, but I think Robin would acknowledge that even though there was help from the sheriff's department, there were still very consistent, profound problems last summer. So
Right.
to the extent I would definitely wholeheartedly endorse the idea of actually putting in place that advisory committee with, a combination of members of the select board and highly interested parties like Robin, to so that it's not just discussion among the folks in town, but instead something that's formally taken up in a meaningful way by the select board.
May I make an historical observation about Pikes Falls? Because I was part of this when Mr. Stone gave it over to the town back in the day. And one of the concerns there always was about public access. And watching this evolve over the past 20 years, my concern now is public access used to be closer to the Gibson property, and now I'm seeing it going up through to the cemetery lot and down that way. What is the town legally liable for as to access to that property? What is the actual legal access to that property? Because I'm seeing two accesses now, and I don't know if that covers the town. And Charlie's been on this board for Pikes Falls since the transfer from Mr. Stone to the town. So that's a concern for me for the town to add another layer on.
Sure.
It does sound like Jessica's point about getting this committee in gear ASAP makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And last summer, I drove by there many times. It is crazy up there, and I'm sure Hamilton Falls is the same. So as proactive as you can be it, because people are coming.
You're here.
Agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There were-
yeah.
John Beacon has his hand up, Greg.
Oh, go ahead, John. I'm missing the hand sometimes.
That's why I'm here to help.
Can't see everybody.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, first of all, and I don't mean to say this lightheartedly, I really want to thank Andy for attending the Wyndham Select Board meeting and representing the Jamaica Select Board in front of Forest Parks and Recreation. And they are really trying to help control the parking at both of these waterfalls, because having fire and rescue have good access, especially in Hamilton, at Hamilton Falls, is really important. And the sooner the Jamaica Select Board can begin the process of revising your traffic ordinance, then the sooner Forest Parks and Recreation can decide how much parking they're going to allow. And so the only thing I'd like to say is that I appreciate your focus on this issue, and I encourage you to start working on it as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just one other thing about that meeting. It was made clear that the falls cannot be shut down because it's public property. And because of the ADA Act, American Disabilities. And I thought that they had some say in the existing parking, but I didn't want to go there. There was a lot to absorb, but they were going to try to sort it out short and long term.
Rob or Eric, I don't know which.
Rob or Ed, I don't know who's hiding behind you either.
I'm hiding behind the screen.
Okay.
Okay, it's Rob. Hi,
I
Rob.
think that the problem with Pikes Falls and Hamilton Falls is greater because of the fact that the Stratton swimming hole on Kendall Farm Road is closed at this present point in time. So depending on what Stratton does this summer, whether they open the swimming hole back up to people, part of our problem could be cured if they open that back up, because the people will influx to there rather than Hamilton and Pikes Falls. That's all.
Unfortunately, I'm not so sure that may happen based on, but that I won't comment much more than that, other than they've got some restrictions on usage for that they may hold fast to. But that means we are all the more in need of pushing hard and fast on some of these things. All right. Thank you, Andy. Any other comments, questions, suggestions on that one? A big topic. It's already getting too warm. I want it to snow, so it slows this down.
No.
All right. Well, thank you everyone on that discussion. Next item.
Wait.
Oh, sorry, Paul.
Yeah, before we leave this item, let's move on this committee.
Yeah, so actually, I mean, I know Robin had expressed interest, and I know there's been kind of probably a loose committee that we need to really kind of pull together. I don't know if we want to take action on asking Robin to recommend a group, including some select board members and some local residents up there and maybe a few others.
Right. I think we could take the next couple of weeks to informally, get, some real people who are comfortable volunteering, as well as put together potentially a proposal for when they meet and the scope of their recommendations.
You
So,
think we could have some names by next select board meeting?
oh
I
yeah,
would imagine so, yeah. I
Oh,
think
yeah.
she's very enthusiastic in wanting to help.
yeah,
Okay, good.
without a doubt.
Excellent. Thanks.
Yeah, good, thanks. Okay, so item 7, Jackie had requested time on the meeting to talk about something that she had brought up last fall, but just to kind of bring up again and pose the question, I guess. Go ahead.
Thank you. So Tom Tolbert and I are a couple, and I moved in with him on his Water Street home in January. So I'm just interested in pursuing the idea that was brought up last fall that seemed to have the approval of the select board. And that is to plant a strip of wildflowers on Water Street in the space between our house and Andy Coyne's house. In that stretch, as most of you know, there were 4 houses that were washed away 10 years ago this August during Tropical Storm Irene. Since then, the lots have been open and, they're perfectly nice, but I thought it would be a nice idea to just plant a strip of wildflowers between the 2 properties. It's about 320 linear feet. I'm proposing to plant wildflowers about in an expanse about 5 or 6 feet deep beyond where there's currently a space next to the sidewalk being mowed on a volunteer basis by Peter Andres. So anyways, I just want to get official permission to move forward with that. Tom and I have a rototiller. I'm volunteering to buy a showstopper mix of seeds. And I have volunteers from the neighborhood who are prepared to help out and planting the seeds. And hopefully we will then have a show of a show of flowers in a couple of months. So just looking for a formal go ahead, and then we'll get started because the season to start tilling is now.
I personally think it's a wonderful idea. I think that's, you know, it's open space that can be much more visually appealing. And whether it's mowing, we can look at even improving or enhancing what you're working on and working on some invasives eradication in there, some trimming the apple trees. I mean, it's a great space. I love it. I would love to see wildflowers and whatnot.
And obviously, we're going to talk to Peter about mowing because we don't want, once the flowers start to come up, you know, he say, "Oh, look, what's this?" So we'll talk to him too and make sure he's in the loop on everything.
I'd like to,
On another point, that sounds very nice. What, I know we got a busy night here, but what would the town of Jamaica think about having a forester come in there and talk about planting some trees in a strategic way, fast growing trees, maybe oak trees, a little bit I know about it, to maybe hold that for the next, it's not funny, the next flood that comes through there. I know it's a little different than wildflowers. Every little bit helps. Like lilac bushes saved my house. And, a huge piece of cement that was in the ground from God knows what. But you know, like you were saying, there's a lot of loose ground there, and just something to maybe think about later. You know, put some nice fast growing, deep rooted trees in there because that, you know, it's hard to remember that was all gone there.
Right.
That was completely
We just have to
gone.
bear in mind that the river corridor is pretty strictly regulated, and there is an individual who governs sort of our area. So before we spend a lot of time or even any money having a consultant come in, I think we need to vet that first. But I think it's a good idea to say what would be allowed and where. But yeah, the river guy, as he's, you know, euphemistically known, does have to be consulted before, you know, any step would be taken.
Yeah, I mean, natural type stuff is great. I mean, we can't go building walls and stuff, but any kind of natural control of erosion is, but
So-
have
The wildflowers are a start.
experts come in and.
Do we need a motion? Or do we just want
Yes,
to?
we need a motion.
I'll make a
Paul, do you have
motion.
something?
I'll make a motion to approve letting Jackie and the volunteers in the town to plant wildflowers on a 5-foot strip between my house and Andy's house.
I second the motion.
I have a question.
Go
In the
ahead, Paul.
discussion part, I would just like to hear something from the adjacent homeowner that we haven't heard from yet. Mr. Coyne,
Like what?
yes or no?
I'm just going to abstain. What am I supposed to say?
I just
No?
wonder if there's anything that being the adjacent
Are you
homeowner.
gonna put it right up to my dog fence? I got these killer attack purebreds that go insane when they see wildflowers coming out of the ground.
Well,
we
I
are
did get the endorsement of your wife, Andy.
Yes,
In that case, you're overruled, Andy. We're going forward.
I'll still abstain, but go ahead, let it rip. Any roots help.
Any roots help.
Wildflowers are a start to stop future erosion.
Yeah, and I think any kind of, I mean, the flood control, the foresters, any kind of these experts that can come in there and help us with that would be great. So all in favor of supporting the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I'll abstain.
So 3, the motion passes.
Yay.
Yay.
Thank you.
Jackie.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you.
Okay. So next item on the agenda, that's me, update on the waste containers. I guess I probably should have been a little bit more specific on there. Wyndham Solid Waste Management District, which we are members of, just to refresh everybody, had loaned us some of their roll-off containers several years ago. I guess it was 2017. There was a committee formed as part of that group to suggest the long-term usage for those, because they were basically just given out to the town for use. They've already been depreciated off of their books and everything, so to them, there's no value. They have the committee, with the approval of the Wyndham Solid Waste Board, which I am our voting member. We agreed that the towns would take those over, take ownership of those on July 1st. So that's, you all may have seen a flurry of email come through, and just to kind of explain what that was. Basically, we're terminating the previous memorandum of understanding, which allowed us to use those containers. We are now taking ownership of them. So as of January or July 1st. So long run, it's great. They still do have a number of years of life in them. I mean, eventually they do disintegrate. We will continue, we'll save some money. We've actually, related to that, tracked down our missing containers that Casella still had. So we can save on some of our leasing of the ones that we had been through Triple T. So that's what's all that's about. I don't know if there's any further questions or regarding that, but we'll need to sign off on that and get it back over to them. Any question on that? No? All right, yeah, so that was that. That was the update on that. So if nothing there, we will move on. One thing that kind of came to my attention, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, is that we've now, Lou and Barbara have both resigned as our listers. Lou, a few months ago, Lou Brusso and Barbara Ferguson, just a few weeks ago. We have talked about this a whole lot, but I don't believe we have formally accepted their resignations. Now leading up to town meeting, we have each of the open positions posted for a vote at town meeting. So I wanted to just bring that to formalization to make a motion to accept their resignation.
Do we want to wait until May 1st? I mean, I don't want to be disrespectful to Barbara, but could we go to her and say, hey, can you stick around for another 2 weeks? And then at town meeting day, she's done.
Yeah, well, we've already made a motion. I mean, I don't want to be disrespectful either. We've already moved forward with appointing Lou as the assessor
Right.
to
I'm
do
aware of that. Okay.
the bulk of the work that we need right now,
Okay.
since we don't have a quorum of the board.
I move we accept the lister's resignations.
You're not hooked.
Didn't quite hear it.
Didn't hear you.
I move that we accept those 3 resignations. Do you need their names?
Sure,
The
Barbara
listers?
Ferguson and Lou Brusso.
I'll second the
moved.
motion.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 We have to thank them both very much, and Micah, for all of their efforts and over the past few years. And we'll, as of now, in that town meeting, we'll be looking to fill those 3 roles. Okay. On to number 9, and motion passes, I guess. No, I didn't vote, did we?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah,
Yep.
we did.
Okay. I got my shot today. My mind is going bad.
Lots of
Oh, wait till tomorrow.
heavy agenda.
My arm hurts already. So a liquor license, there's a liquor license to be approved. I believe, Sarah, if I'm correct, it's for the 3 Mountain Inn. If I'm trying to remember that too.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
And then that completes everybody in town, and short of anybody new.
I'll make a motion to accept the liquor license for the 3 Mountain Inn.
I'll
I'll
second
the
that.
motion. Oh,
Believe the word should be approved.
Yes,
Approve, sorry. Approve
Okay.
the liquor license for 3 Mountain Inn.
I'll still second it.
Okay, any further discussion? submitted all of their paperwork and all that good stuff.
Yep.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
My,
It's unanimous. Any opposed? All right, thank you. Next item is to our annual approval of the bridge and road standards that V-Trans puts out. Terry had posted those up there. Didn't read it with fine tooth comb, but I believe they're exactly what they were before. We probably make a few tweaks every year.
I did talk to Terry. They are the same. She put in the numbers. Those of you who looked at this before this afternoon will notice that on page 1 of the, oops, just dumped it. On page 1, there's a section under, well, there's supposed to be some things circled. When I talked to her earlier this afternoon, she resubmitted another page with them circled the way they're supposed to be. So the most recent one you have in your file should be accurate. The one that took earlier, like this morning, didn't have the circles, you know, the yeses and no's circled. So the one that's up on board right now is correct.
Okay.
Okay. Do we need a motion?
Think so.
We
I'll
should
make
have
a motion to accept the report on roads, street cleaning. Oh, no, sorry. Approve the road and bridge standards.
I'll second the
I'm getting ahead of
motion.
myself there, sorry.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes, 5 approve. All righty, so the next item that Tom wanted to approve, now, this is
Yeah,
more for an
I'll approve that one
update.
too.
That I spoke with Keith this week and just a little bit of an update on things. I know everybody's out there wondering what's going on, and you know, the roads we went through are typical mud season, better or worse in certain spots. Roads are pretty much, most of the mud is, frost is out. Been grading a few roads. The street cleaner, everybody's wondering when. We are scheduled for April 19th and 20th, which is
Ooh.
great. I
Ooh.
know there's a number of people wanted it sooner, but it's always hard to tell that there's not going to be any snow in the whole month of March. So April 19th and 20th, and it should go fairly smoothly this year, much more smoothly, just because Pikes Falls, as an example, is much smoother than it was before, so they can scrape some of it. There's no pockets of sand in there. The cemetery mowing bid request for bids has gone out. So that will be coming back before our next meeting too. So that's my update on those particular types of things.
Are we using the same people for street cleaning that we did last year?
That's a very good question. I took it, I assumed that.
Yeah.
I'm thinking it is.
Thank you, Greg.
You're welcome. Thank Keith. Yeah.
Yep.
Next item, just as we typically do with me being in the slotted position, maybe in another month, we can all actually sign off on all these. We can see each other. But take a look at the
From your
time
mouth
sheets,
to
the
God's
pay
ears.
orders. And let me know if you're seeing anything in there for any of the timesheets or any of those types of expenses, that kind of thing.
I looked them over. They look pretty standard.
Yeah,
Same.
that's what I was thinking too. All right. Good. Okay, any other public concerns? I think, do we
Yes,
have- Yeah. Fran,
if I may.
go ahead.
Okay, I'll keep this brief. We've been here a long time tonight. I recently had a reason to contact the sheriff's department regarding a individual who trespasses on my property perennially. And
And-
Um,
Come on,
We lost you, Fran.
we lost you, Fran.
Apparently he's trespassing on your
the
signal.
Pardon?
It wouldn't
There we go.
surprise
You're
me.
back.
Bleeped out for just a sec.
No, it
Of
blinked
course,
out
when I'm
again.
talking.
There we go.
Okay, we're going to bring up consolidated communications again sometime. Kelly knows. The situation was such that I had to call them and ask them to inform the individual that the order issued in 2015 was still active. It had no end date. And the response from the sheriff's office was that I had to do this, get this document that they had promulgated taken care of by the state police. And I'm wondering, is that a budget issue? Because even though I asked Andy Coyne to look into it, and Sarah as well in the town office, no one would give him an answer. In the sheriff's department even refused to give an answer to a state police officer. So I'm wondering, what's the issue here that they can't follow through on these things? Is it a budget, or is it manpower, or what do we got?
I don't know the answers to those specifically, but I know the state police have a lot more jurisdiction, so to speak, on those types of issues. We contract, and Andy, you can fill in a little bit. I mean, we contract with the sheriff's department to fulfill a number of roles in town.
Yep.
Obviously, they are the sheriffs also, and they're representatives of, their law enforcement in many areas, not just in parking and things like that. But they're only contracted here a certain amount of time and things like that. So they're not staffing around the clock or anything.
Well, they said to me that it wasn't a budget issue. They said it wasn't a lack of, they said they weren't going to have, their statement was that they weren't going to have an officer in Jamaica for a couple of weeks or a week or something. And I had called in a previous week, and then I called again, speaking with two separate dispatchers. But my surprise is they wouldn't even give a reason to the state police officers. So I'm curious as to what all the mystery is. And if, that's really my curiosity. The situation's been dealt with. I don't need the sheriff's department to act. But I'm curious as to why we get that response from them where they won't answer a direct question from a citizen that's, I believe, a legitimate question. So I'll leave it with that, and thank you very much.
Isn't Windham County only, we're paying them to do traffic, I thought, only. And
You have to look at
the state police does law enforcement. So that could be part of it, is they're like, well, we only do traffic for Jamaica, so call the state police. That would be
Okay, so
my take on it,
the budget is for traffic, then I'm fine with that. But my question was, why wouldn't they answer why they wouldn't do it? They didn't even say that. They wouldn't do that. They refused to answer. And they refused the select board from Andy Coyne to answer him too. So
Well, I didn't
that's
ask
a
them. I
curiosity.
didn't ask them why they didn't.
Oh, you did?
I looked in the contract, and they do X amount of hours of, it's not specific.
Yeah, it's not limited just to traffic.
It isn't? Okay.
No.
Worth of,
I didn't think it was.
Yeah.
I've called them. I thought someone was breaking into the house across the street. And I called the sheriff's department, and before I could say, no, don't do that, they hooked me up with the state police.
Can you move toward the microphone? Andy?
Toward the mic, Andy, we can't hear you.
I can't answer that specifically. All I can tell you is in my experience, I thought there was a breaking and entering across the street. The sheriff's department immediately just hooked me up with the state police before I could even tell them not to do that. So the state police comment was the sheriffs have limited abilities in some things, and they made some other comments that I'm not comfortable saying over the phone. But they thanked me.
Anytime you'd like to tell me, Andy, I'll be there.
They thanked me for the call. The state police did.
Oh, that's nice.
It's really not my business how the state police operates their, what they do on a day-to-day basis, just how they handle our contract. But the next time I'm talking to them, if the board wants me to, I could ask them why they don't act on something like that.
I was just curious because it seemed like it was their position because they had promulgated the file, and that's all. I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, friend. I mean, we'll definitely, that's something of interest. So
we're paying for it.
Yep.
Okay.
Maybe.
Maybe I'm not going to keep everyone later this evening because it's getting up there. But before town meeting, I can't come physically to town meeting because we're having ours on the same day you're having yours. And so apologize for that. But next year I will do the rounds again. I'm looking forward to it already. But at some point in the very near future, I'd like to come to a meeting and talk about the ARPA funds that are going to be coming to everybody. And in the meantime, any webinars or informational things that you can sit in on and listen in as information rolls down to all of us about how that money will be able to be spent is going to be really important to pay attention to. There's a date of May 11th when there's supposed to be a whole bunch of guidance coming down from the Fed. So between now and then, information might stay a little squishy, but you know, there's going to be a chunk of money coming. We'll have 3.5 years to spend it, and how it can be spent is still very much up for discussion. So maybe we can schedule a time when we can talk about that in depth a little bit more, but it's more of that lifetime opportunity kind of stuff. And as you were talking about the work in the floodplain and, you know, doing plantings and things like that, it may be that some of that money can be used for hazard mitigation types of projects. So infrastructure things I would encourage you to start thinking about what kinds of infrastructure projects you might want to put dollars towards.
Thank you.
Super, thank you.
Greg, could I just add a little bit to that? I kind of dropped the ball where I didn't want to load the agenda up anymore. I serve on the Wyndham Regional Commission on the Transportation Committee, and we had a full commission meeting. And during that meeting, Chris Campany spoke to what Kelly just did and gave me something to pass along to the select board. Information about what Kelly was just talking about.
Is that an email you can forward, Andy?
I hope so. I'm pretty sure I have it.
Okay, I'd like to see it too.
Yeah. And I think there are links, Kelly, aren't there links to webinars and other?
Yep. VLCT is helping to get information out. The Clerks Treasurers Association will at some point, I think, probably be helping with that. The Secretary of State's office will probably be helping with that. I mean, it's right now we're kind of waiting for more information, and we have a rough idea of how much money's coming, but there's multiple pots of money coming through some different channels, and some of it's going to come, you know, in the near future, and then there'll be another chunk in about a year from now. And so, you know, it's going to be complicated. It's all going to be very complicated. And on top of that money, which will come directly to the town, there's also going to be a ton of money available through the state that you'll be able to apply for various things. So, you know, start thinking about like what things you can apply for to get additional funding, and what things you might have a little bit more trouble getting other sources of funding for, and could use the more flexible dollars that are going to come directly to you. There's still going to be guidelines you'll have to follow, but I just would start paying attention to the state conversations around where money's going to be flowing through. Wyndham Regional will be a really, really good resource for that. And I know they're going to get a chunk of money. They'll be planning dollars, you know, that is going to come through ARPA and AOT. Like there's going to be layers of things. And so if you can start thinking about what your priorities are and what things you can apply for additional money for, and what things, you know, you might have, there might not be pots of money for, that you could spend the money that's going to come direct to the town. And I think one of the things to also know before the money shows up is that it shouldn't be commingled with any of your general fund. So find a spot where all the federal money can go to be managed. Because it's going to be a couple of years of a lot of management of various funds coming, which is good. It's good.
Yeah. And we have a great planning commission. So Greg, I was wondering if we want to just kind of give Brian a heads up, because I know there are other projects that we were considering applying for grants for that would, you know, at least at first blush, really look like they, you know, there'll be ARPA money for. So
right.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Just having another set of eyes and ears on
exactly
for stuff.
Yeah.
But you know, VLCT and Wyndham Regional in particular, I would pay attention to if they're offering, you know, a webinar or a meeting where there's new information,
Right,
have someone attend. Because
Right.
information is going to come fast and furious for a little while.
perfect.
And I'll do my best to stay on top of it once it starts happening. And it's very nice to see all of you.
You too.
I really missed.
Great, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you, Kelly.
Anytime. You're so much nicer than the others we have to face every.
Hey,
I have to say, your meeting was much more entertaining than Londonderry's select board.
Oh, yeah.
I really enjoyed it.
Bring right along.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Any other public concerns from the public? Greg?
Sorry, guys, I got two things, okay?
All right.
As one is as your town meeting moderator, but I will start with as somebody who is off grid, which means I don't have good broadband coverage. I am thankful for the town office because there's an outdoor facility for me to use during the meeting. I'm very thankful for the porta potty. So my tax dollars hard at work. This is great. Number two, now let's move on to the town meeting
porta potty. Number
because
two.
I'm hearing a lot of stuff going down. You know, if we're going to do it at the town garage, I'm fine with that. But what I need to know, I'm still hearing from the state about limits as to numbers of people that can attend because of spacing issues. And I want to know who is going to be the person standing at the door saying, you're number 76, you can't come in. You cannot vote in this meeting.
My understanding is we're up
Oh,
to
wait, I
150
hold on a
right
sec.
now.
I see Sarah. Do you have something on that, Sarah?
I'll do it. I don't mind.
Go.
You're busy.
But my understanding is the limit is at 150 right now.
Right.
We
and
never have that many people at
also
town meeting.
have-
Okay, so good.
Well, that's what I was kind of maybe hinted at by saying we'll have a little bit more room to relax. Some of the other rationale is that we're still talking, and you would be on the invitee list to do somewhat of a walkthrough of how the layout of the facility, the space would be. But hopefully it's a nice enough day where we can open up a door or two. Maybe if we got to the point that 150 people are in there, we could rope it off. We're still certainly not going to limit somebody's ability to vote. They may just not be able to actually attend the meeting inside the building. I mean, that would be the worst case scenario if we got to 152 or something.
Which would be great. I'd like to
Right.
have that problem. Now we move on to the secondary level of that. We have positions that are opening up. So what happens when you have two people running for an office? We cannot do a floor vote. It has to be a ballot vote. How do we deal with that?
If we set up in such a way that everyone gets in line to vote, the tail end of that line is going to be out the door. So we'll have a rotating 150 bunch of people.
Which is fine with me. I just want to know the logistics before I try to enact it in real time.
Yeah, well, I think this too, it would be, I mean, it's awesome to be aware of them in advance and think about it. But then in the next week or so, I'm just going to throw out a week, have a walkthrough
Yeah.
down there to say,
I think that's the time to look.
we're going to put the podium here. This is where Greg's going to be standing. This is where the select board will be seating. This will be where the ballot box sits. Maybe the ballot box sits right at the door, so everybody lines up outside to go vote. Yeah,
Sure.
I mean, it's going to be different.
And that's fine. I'm sorry it's late, but great. Everybody lines up outside and it's raining.
Then we move them to the side of the building where there's an overlap. A lot of this is going to flex around the weather, clearly.
Good. Yeah. All right. Good.
Then people
We're just-
have to get wet.
They're gonna
mean-
get wet, right? Tom said it before I could.
It's just that as the
You want to vote, you get
moderator,
wet.
it's just as the moderator, if I get reelected at the beginning of the meeting, I need to understand what I can do legally for the people who've come to vote.
Right.
Because I am responsible to make sure that their votes go through properly. So
Right.
I'm just being very particular about this. So yeah, I would love a walkthrough. So set it up, I'll be there.
Good.
Sounds great.
We're having a lot of those same conversations about how to do that. And we haven't figured it all out either. But one of the things that has come up as a walkthrough kind of thing that we are trying is if every person or household is in their 6-foot spot,
Yeah,
and then we need to do a paper ballot vote, rather than having all of those people get in line and move, have them stay in their spot and bring the ballot box to everybody.
oh,
I'm still not sure how exactly. So we may end up not being able to, but we're doing all that same, like, how do we keep people apart and still, make sure we've got everyone checked off and know how many people have voted and all. So like,
I'm perfect.
think outside the box. So
I'm
some-
perfectly willing to improvise as long as I know I got a floor under me. That's all.
Yeah.
I can make this work in multiple ways as long as I know, and I'm sure the board would be behind me, but I just want to make sure I'm also within state regulations and laws.
As of the 1st of May, it goes from law or mandate to recommendation. And so all the mandates that we are living under now become recommendations on the 1st of May.
Okay.
And we're good. So then we can do what's recommended without getting all bent out of shape about trying to get too crazy. Plus the vaccine, that we're all going to be vaccinated and healthy and everything.
Okay. So we're just going to surf the wave. Okay.
We may change it again.
It's true.
Hey, this is Jamaica. Let's surf the wave.
Yes.
but it's an opportunity to think about, it's all different. It's all just different. We have to
The
just
most
figure
important, as long as if we're fluid, but still make sure that everybody has the ability to participate, then I think we're going to be good.
I think so too.
But I want to make sure I'm on board with the board, because I can do things outside the box that they might feel uncomfortable about, and I don't want that to happen.
Oh, come on.
No.
No, so we're just clarifying here.
Yep,
This is
yeah.
Yeah.
No, this whole year has been so interesting because it's, we all know how we do all of these things, right? And then it turns out we've had to refigure out how to do all of these very meaningful, very what felt like basic things. And it's been like a mind bender every day. But,
well, if we can treat it as a jazz improvisation, keep the theme going and just go with
Right,
it. Until
go
we...
with
All right. I'm in. That's all I wanted.
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, because
that was my
know
concern.
things on a different side than we do. So
Yes.
Okay, good. We're good. I want to go online, go viral after the fact.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, concerns, publics?
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All right. All in favor of adjourning? Adios.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Kelly.
Kelly.
Thanks.
Rich, I'll get you this in the morning.
Great, thank you.
Okay, take care.
Thank you, everyone, for having me this evening.
No
Goodbye.
problem.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.